I'm now going to look at how we can work with very large datasets. So typically some engineering reference geometry that you'd need to work around in your design. And for this I'm going to use the Reference Manager tool on the File menu. But before I use that, I want to show you how it would work normally so that we can compare the two approaches. So I'm going to import a wheel, and I'll need to make sure this is set to all files because my wheel is an IGES file. And this is a fully detailed engineering model of a wheel. Now I'm going to shorten the sequence on my screen, but it actually took about 45 seconds on my computer to load in, so it's quite a heavy file. And I'd probably want to see a rear wheel as well, so I can copy that and move it off to the rear position. Now with that amount of data in the file, everything gets slowed down. So shading, for example, takes about 14 seconds. And you can see the progress bar down here. And that's because it's having to tessellate and shade all this detail. Now I want to save this file so that I can compare the size later on, and I'll just call it ref1. So now let's do the same thing again, but this time using the Reference Manager. So in the control window I can use File Translate, and that allows me to open up the reference data. And I've got all files set so I can see my IGES file, so I can just open up the wheel. And it's called Translate because when it brings it in, it's tessellating and translating it into a much lighter version of the data. And you can see the progress bar here. And again I've shortened the sequence, but it took roughly 45 seconds to do that translation. So what that's done is create a reference file version of the wheel in my current project directories. And the file has a .wref extension, and it's about 12 megabytes. And that's in the reference folder of my project. So to get the wheel into the scene, I need to use my right mouse button and import. And then you can see that translated wheel. And it's now much lighter data, which will shade much more quickly as it's already tessellated. And there's lots of things I can do with the reference data. So I can cut cross sections, for example, and I'll just use the global settings so that it applies to everything. And I've got a transparency slider for the reference files as well. And I'll just make the mesh a bit lighter too. And if I want to create a rear wheel, there's an option within the Reference Manager called Alternatives. So if I open up the reference file and select the wheel, and then say Edit New Alternative, then I get this alternative over here. And if I open that up, you can see I've got a copy of the wheel. So then if I select up at this alternative level, I can now use the transforms. So I can move that wheel across to the rear position. And I'm just going to clear the cross sections. So now I have the two wheels, but everything should still work quickly on the screen because they're reference data. So the shading is quick and the interaction on the screen is good as well. So let's have a look at the file sizes. So I'll save that one and call it ref2. And if I now go to my wire directory, you can see the difference in size. So the original car mesh was just 342. And then with the Reference Manager version of the wheels, that's only increased to 439. But the file with the imported data is nearly 20 megabytes. So I've provided the IGES file of the wheel. So have a go at exploring the difference between importing it directly and using the Reference Manager.